What's up, Tiger fans? You're having a great day. I am Zach Lentz, joined by today Jason Priester, Brad Singer, on today's edition of Death Valley Daily. Guys, how are y'all?
Doing great.
Doing pretty good, man.
I heard that. Listen, I got a confession to make before we get started here. So, my confession is, I'm not sure how many people actually know this, but I had COVID last week. The whole family was hit by it. And this week, with schools being out because of the weather and stuff like that, I have gained like 10 pounds. It's
Oh,
sad.
so what are you up to?
It's,
Are you up to about $150 now?
oh, shut up, man. Listen. All right, so I went to the doctor today, okay? And they have those old fashioned scales, the kind where it actually, numbers go up and down with a little needle. That thing kept going. It was amazing. So they had to take my shirt off, and I looked like this. That's an actual picture of me from my appointment earlier today. I look like Fat Thor.
It's like dad bod Thor.
Exactly. But I mean, this is eating shit and I and stuff. I've had nothing but cookies and cream ice cream every night. And look, I've given up on even a bowl at this point. I sit there with a gallon, bucket in my lap and just spoon that shit in my mouth. So, it, I guess what I'm looking for is I actually went today, or I'm sorry, yesterday, and downloaded the Weight Watchers app. So, I am committed. I'm going to lose this weight. But I just had to, get off my chest, a little confession time. So, I appreciate y'all listening to that.
Yeah, let's end the confessions with that one and talk about something people really want to hear about.
I hear that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Clemson basketball. All right, so this is initially a conversation we were gonna have on Monday's show. Uh, I'm sorry, Tuesday's show. And Monty Lee joined us. We ran out of time. Stock up and stock down Clemson basketball. This is a team right now that is reeling. They're not playing good at all. With a 23-point lead to Boston College the other night. And then went to Syracuse and got stomped. I mean, is there anything good to say about the basketball team right now?
Well, I mean they're not playing well. There's no debate there. There's no way to spin it. Their defense has been very lackluster, and
Brad Brown the other night said their defense played great against Syracuse. So
no, he understands the issues that they're having. Well, they don't have a big man. They're stuck, sort of trying to square peg round hole this thing without any real size on this team. PJ Hall's too much of an offensive guy. He's not a rim protector. He's learning kind of as he goes defensively. He's also not very healthy. Neither is Hunter Tyson. They're gonna have to juggle the lineups. They've just got all kinds of defensive issues that they've got to solve. And the problem is they don't have much time to do it. Pitt coming into town this weekend. That's the problem with college basketball when you get this point of the season, man. You just don't have the time
yeah,
to really put into improving yourself. You just got to figure it out on the fly, or else you'll get beat.
yeah, there's no layups anymore. There's no of those kind of feel bad about yourself games. Jason, your thoughts on this team? I mean,
I
struggles this
just
season are really not.
yeah, I think this team really lacks size, and that's one of the biggest things hurting them. On the nights that they don't shoot well, they're going to have issues, and they have not shot the ball as well in the past few games as they did, to start out the season when they were one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. And when the shots aren't falling, usually that's going to spell trouble for this team.
Yeah, but if they shoot 40, they shot 49% against Syracuse. They shouldn't have lost by double digits. You shoot 49%, you make 8 or 9 threes. There's no excuse losing by 13 points. I mean, at the most maybe you lose by 5 or 6. You give yourself a chance late in the game. their defense is so horrendous. I mean, they have to shoot 55% to win games. Like, that's not sustainable. That's not even – that shouldn't even happen. You shouldn't even ask a team to pull that off. Look, bottom line, this team was not constructed well from the beginning. You know, I know they lost Kidd to transfer and Prosper transferred out. So that's two guys that are supposed to give them some sort of size. But from the very beginning, this team can shoot the ball well. They just have zero ability to defend right now.
Yeah, and they really have zero ability to defend the rim, which is where they're getting abused is in the paint.
Well, yeah, they got small guards too. So what happens when you have a 6'5" guard on a 5'10" guard? He's going to pull up and he's going to shoot on him all day. And at this league, at this level, everybody who can handle the basketball is going to pull up and nail jump shots against you. And that's why they're struggling more now than they were a few weeks ago. They just run into teams that have guys who have the ability to, you know, beat them off the dribble just enough to pull up and hit a jump shot. But you're right, Zach, they're getting destroyed in the paint as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad to see because Brad Brown had his legacy was built on defense. And right now, this team is struggling to play any semblance of good defense. Jason, this upcoming game against Pittsburgh, how big of a game is this for the Tigers?
Oh, I think this is a huge game. You know, you've lost, what is it, 4 or 5 now, or 3 or 4, whatever it is, and you got to get that. You got to get that turn that around. If you got any hope of wanting to make the tournament at the end of the season, you got to win this game.
The ACC tournament or the NCAA tournament or CBI or NIT? I mean, come on, what tournament are you talking about?
Any tournament. I mean, that Boston College loss was bad enough. You got to win the games you're supposed to win at home, and they have not done that here recently.
I think, you know, this is a team that there weren't a lot of expectations put on them going into the year, but I think what's disappointing is the ACC is not good this season, and there was a chance for upward mobility had they found some stabilization on both ends of the court, and that's just not happened. So I think the disappointment is they've lost to some teams they just shouldn't lose to, like you said, Jason. You got to win these kind of games. The BCs, the Pitts, when they come to your building, you have to win. So they've had an opportunity to actually join kind of the upward tier of this league, and they just didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is a year, if Clemson is going to make some noise in the ACC, this is a year to do it. North Carolina's down, Virginia's down, as we saw. I mean, the league is right there for the taking this season, but the Tigers have just been mediocre at best. Do you see any chance for them to get things headed in the right direction starting Saturday?
Well, I mean, obviously, if they figure out something on defense, I think right now their best chance is to shake the lineup up a little bit.
Chase Hunter.
I think Chase Hunter's got to be. I don't want to say given the reins to the team, but I think he's got to be getting 20, 25 minutes from here on out at least. And I think whether he starts or not doesn't really matter. It's the minutes he's got to get. They've got to give him an opportunity because I'm not sure there's anybody else that's going to provide a spark right now. For this team, and keep giving PJ Hall the ball. Hopefully he gets healthy. Hopefully Hunter Tyson gets healthy. So yeah, I think there's a chance they can get better as they go along. But right now, until they fix some things on that defensive end, I don't know if it's going to get a ton better.
Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Brad. I would love to see a lot more of Chase Hunter on the floor. He brings a kind of a different dynamic, at least on the offensive end. And he gives you a little more size than, say, Jeff Hemingway does. And he can shoot the ball. And he's just not played as much as I thought he would this season.
Whether this team I was going to say that's starting to change though. Like he's got some opportunities the last 3 games. His numbers have gone up. His minutes have gone up. 7. I think it was 7, 7, and 11. 3 games. His last 3 games. So he's going to get the opportunity. And Hemingway just didn't make enough shots to stay on the court. He is a defensive liability.
Yeah, he's definitely Hemingway's definitely a defensive liability, especially in league play.
Yeah, so Graham Neff, the new AD at Clemson, said that he had the easiest first month of any AD. He said he actually texted Dan Rakovic, said what's so hard about this job. In his first couple of weeks, he had a soccer win national title, Clemson win the bowl game, and everything was looking peachy. However, is Brad Brown going to be his biggest decision coming as a new AD? Will he have the not guts, but the ability to pull the trigger on Brad Brown if it comes to that?
Yeah, it's still early in that process, and here's the thing: I don't know what Graham Neff's stance is going to be with basketball, and I don't know if we can read that completely into whatever he decides to do with this season. But I just feel like the old regime at times was okay with Clemson basketball just kind of being what it is, and not necessarily expecting a ton or huge leaps. That may change now, and it also may change with who gets into Graham's ear and who what boosters, what IPTAY members, what are their expectations? What do they want to see? I don't have the answers to any of those questions. I just think that's what he's going to be facing is who speaks up and exactly what are those voices and what do those voices say. That's going to determine the future of Clemson basketball.
I guess the bigger question may be how hot is Brad Brown's seat right now?
That's tough. Right this very second, I'm not sure it's as hot with Graham Neff as it maybe is the rest of the fan base, but I do think people around Clemson, and I'm talking more about the fans, are starting to formulate more ideas of what they want this program to be. And that means they're going to start putting pressure on the decision makers. Because I think for the last couple of years, it's just been simply, fire Brownell, start over, get better. But no one's formulated any thoughts on what that all means. Like, what does get better mean? I think that's starting to change, and that tells me the tide in terms of interest in this program moving forward could start to change.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how hot Brownell's seat is realistically right now. That's hard to say, especially with a new AD. And it's really hard to say what it might take for Graham Neff to pull the trigger and make that change. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out if this team can't get it turned around and start winning some games here over the second half of the season.
Let me ask you guys this. What should be the expectation of Clemson basketball? Let's put it in, say, a 3 to 5 year window. Like what should this program, should it do on a year-to-year basis based on something like 3 to 5 year window? What, 2-3 NCAA tournaments, berths? Should it recruit better? Like what's the expectation?
Jason, I'll let you start with this one.
My first thing would be you got to recruit a little better, especially when it comes to putting your roster together. And I know Brownell's kind of handcuffed when it comes to recruiting, or has been in the past due to facilities and stuff. And I still think Clemson lags behind in facilities behind the other ACC teams, despite the renovations here in recent years. That would be number one to me. And to me, that's the biggest thing is the recruiting. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think they've got to get better players. I've been saying that for 2 or 3 years, not just transfer portal guys. It's got to be recruits that you can develop. And he doesn't need a Fab Five. He just needs 2 or 3 guys that they can cultivate and develop. Like PJ Halls. They need more guys like that. So yeah, I think you're on something there, Jason.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Jason. Yeah, part of me wants to think back to Dan Rakovich and the renovations that was done at Little John. I think, looking back on that renovation, I wonder if it wasn't done backwards, thinking about, it was more for the corporate fans, for the big money donors and stuff like that, the suites and the floor seats and stuff like that. I wonder how much input Brown had in the renovations that went on there.
He had a lot, as far as I know.
Then, yeah, that's no longer an excuse then. I mean, you can't use that as an excuse if you had any input into it.
Yeah.
However, I think that along with recruiting, you have to have an expectation of making the tournament. I say, every 5 years you should make the tournament 2 of those years. I don't think that's unrealistic for Clemson.
I don't think that's unrealistic, but they've sort of done that though. They've made technically 2 of the last 3 that have been played. There was the 1 year where it wasn't played.
Yeah.
I would say, to me, making the tournament 50% of the time should be the realistic goal at this point.
Yeah, so I think, when you think about this team, are they underperforming this season? Maybe. I mean, or if you want to think about, the fact that they made the tournament 2 of the last 4 years, is that overperforming?
Well, they've been to the tournament, I think 13 times as a program in the history of Clemson basketball. So the tournament it's one of those tricky conversations. It's really hard to say how many you have to make and how far you have to go when they don't have like a deep tournament resume background to fall back on. Like Clemson basketball just doesn't have true history. I think what a lot of people are wanting, from what I've been able to gather lately, they want to see more enthusiasm in the program. They want to see more energy. They want to see Little John. I don't want to say back to necessarily the Auburn Purnell days, because I'm not sold the Auburn Purnell days were as great as some people make them out to be, but I do think there's a lack of. Yeah. Now, yeah, exactly.
Tom Wyman,
right now, what I think Brownell has done and why he's lost some of the defensive identity is, in this day and age, you're just not going to get anybody can play for you anymore trying to win 51-50. Like, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So he's had to go get better basketball players who can shoot, who can run the floor, who can keep pace with some of these other teams. And then I think in return, it's cost him on the other end of the floor because these guys just don't buy into defense the way that he wants them to.
All right, so here's another question with regards to Brown. Was the hire of him by Dan Rakovich a knee-jerk reaction to kind of be the anti-Oliver Purnell? You had a guy in Purnell who was 92 feet or 94 foot, full court press, wanted to run and gun, score as many points as you can, press the other team until you can't press anymore. Then you bring a guy like Brownell, who's kind of an Indiana guy. He's going to be a slow it down, motion offense guy. And he's tried to adapt. I mean, giving credit where credit's due. He has tried to adapt his team and his offensive philosophy. However, you can't put a square peg in a round hole. I feel like that's what Brownell's been trying to do these past couple of years. He's been trying to say they're going to push tempo. He said they're going to get up and down the floor more. They do that against lesser teams, but when it comes to ACC play, they can't be this, up and down the floor team. So, I mean, to me, it seems like he was a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to Oliver Purnell's style and philosophy. And so, he's got to be true to who he is. He can't, like Monty Lee told us the other day, you have to be true to who you are.
But Zach, if he had stuck to what he was doing and didn't adapt, he wouldn't be the head coach right now. He changed his style. He got more aggressive offensively because he would be fired. Like, he would have been long gone. Yeah. He never would have made it to this season. I mean, the game has changed so much over the course of the last 10 years.
Yeah, I agree. Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with that. He had to adapt his offensive philosophy some because nobody wants to come play for just a guy that's going to focus solely on defense. Guys want to score, and like Brad said, the game has changed so much in the last 10 or 15 years.
All right, so since Brown has been able to adapt, we agree with that, right? He's adapted his offense to be a little bit more on the scoring side of things. Why hasn't he been able to land this recruiting class? We saw him miss out on guys like Zion Williamson and other guys. I mean, P.J. Hall's probably arguably his biggest catch. I mean, so what is holding the Tigers back from a recruiting standpoint? Is the fact just the history of the program?
A lot of it's history, yeah. And the inability to, how do I say it tactfully, play the game within the game, if you know what I mean. That's why he didn't get Zion. He didn't pay for it. I mean, it's that simple. There's a game within the game that you have to play in college basketball, and I don't think Brownell and his staff have ever been comfortable doing that. And has it cost them some recruits? Absolutely it has. But I think history is also a major factor into it as well.
Yeah, I think history is one of the biggest factors too. And I'll add this. I think Brownell's recruited a little better than, in the last few years than he was over the first part of his tenure. But once you get those guys inside the program, you got to be able to keep them there too. Guys like Lynn Kidd transferring out after one season.
Right.
And you just have to keep going back to the transfer portal every season to bring in 2 or 3 more guys. To me, that's just not a way to build a program. You're not going to gain a whole lot of consistency on a year-to-year basis like that when the faces just, completely change from year to year.
Well, I think I know I'm guilty of this at least, comparing so many teams to that Sweet 16 team that had Marquise Reed and Shelton Mitchell and Elijah Thomas. Like those were transfer guys. So you think every year you're supposed to get those guys. And that's just not how it works. Like the transfer portal is so flooded nowadays. Yeah, there's quality players, but every one of those guys hit, basically. I know Mitchell had some knee injuries that kind of held him back a little bit, but he was still a huge part of what they did. So, like, ideally, I think if you're Brad Brownell, the best way to build your team is to have a couple of freshmen. Have a guy like P.J. Hall that you're developing, and he's getting better as he goes through the course of the career. But as you say, Jason, keeping guys like that around, and at the same time finding 2 or 3 portal guys a year that can give you bigger production than what he's got in the last couple. But it's just not as easy just plucking a Marquise Reed. Those guys aren't everywhere.
Yeah, I was going to say, also you have to look at the fact that Clemson is not known as an NBA funnel. I mean, you don't have guys going from Clemson after a year or two to the NBA. So in a day and time when guys are focused solely on their future and how they can get to the league, Clemson's not generally that path. I mean, you look at guys like Amir Sims, who's in D League now, Casey Rivers, who played a few years. I mean, there's not a long list of guys that, in recent memory, that have made a name for themselves in the league.
That goes back to the history that you were talking about. Yeah, they don't have the history of putting guys in at the next level.
Exactly. So I think something has to change there. I mean, they may need a guy like P.J. Hall to come in and be not a lottery pick, but first or second round guy to the league, and then he can kind of preach. Clemson developed him.
But there are a lot of ways to win in college basketball. There used to be like a handful, and that was it. I think there's more ways to be successful in this day and age with the way the transfer portal exists and the kind of style and systems and shooters that you get these days. So there's more than one way to skin a cat.
I think you kind of touched on it a minute ago. You got to find that right balance of high school guys and transfer guys.
Yeah.
And, maybe the transfer guys you bring in, maybe they're not always guys with just 1 year left. And that seems to be the way it's gone the last couple of years. It's just been a bunch of graduate transfers.
Good point.
Yeah. Yeah. Earlier this week, ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips kind of put to bed the idea of college football playoff expansion, saying that Clemson was one of the teams that he spoke to and is against expansion for the reason that Dabo has said in the past he doesn't want to play more games. He doesn't see the need in playing more games. It's not beneficial to the student athlete. However, a lot of people are upset by this, saying that it needs to happen now. Guys, your thoughts. Are you buying or selling that college football expansion needs to happen if the playoffs are going to continue in their current form?
Go ahead, Jason.
I don't think it needs to happen. I'm a believer in the 4-team playoff. I've never made any bones about that. I think 4 is enough. I don't even think most years there are 4 teams capable of winning a national championship. Definitely not 6, 8, or 12 or whatever. I don't think it needs to happen. I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. There's just too much money to be made by expansion. And, it's coming either way.
I think it does need to happen. I think college football, for the health from coast to coast, needs it. And not from a standpoint, it doesn't do anything to aid Clemson. It doesn't do anything to help Alabama, Ohio State. It's not going to change how we name a national champion. But I think we do need to include more teams because this game has become so regionalized. And I think ratings are a factor. I think interest is a factor. Regular season interest can go up and down. Like I think the game is healthier if we just allow more teams into the playoff. It's not going to change how we develop a champion. We're still going to get Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Clemson every year. There's still going to be the same teams there. I think for the health of the game, to grow the game and keep it viable, I think expansion absolutely needs to happen. Now, where I agree with Phillips is expansion doesn't need to happen at the cost of putting all these other issues in college football on the back burner, we need to fix some things. We need to work on making sure we understand NIL. It needs some regulations. It needs some rules. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it needs it. We need to understand the transfer portal better. We need to find a way to move the calendar around so we don't have some overlaps of the transfer portal stuff going on in the middle of early signing period, coaches getting fired. That stuff's very unhealthy for the game. If we don't fix that first, I don't care about the expansion. We got to take care of what we can deal with first, then move on to expanding college football playoff.
All right, so if expansion is going to happen, what does it look like? Is it an 18-mile with the Power 5 getting all their conference champions in and 3 at-large bids?
I don't know. For a long time, I thought we were headed to the 12 team with the possibly some kind of automatic qualifiers. I think that's going to be the biggest sticking point. Some leagues really want to see automatic qualifiers. Some do not. The number doesn't really matter to me. I think we end up probably settling on 12. There'll come some sort of agreement on that. But how we get there, it's going to be a long road because I think the smart thing to do is, one, fix some of the other problems I just mentioned. And the second thing is to let this thing go to market. Don't let ESPN run it. Like, let other networks bid on it. Let it be like the NFL.
That's blasphemy. I mean, come on. You're not going to let the 4-letter network run things? I mean,
No. They're handing away way too much stuff now. We let them dictate the direction of college football as it is, and they just dictate their own narratives. And it absolutely hurts the game. So I think we need to open this thing up and let it go to the highest bidder.
Yeah, I could not agree more. They absolutely need to, open this thing up and let everybody else bid on it because ESPN has too much control over the sport right now. And you just nailed it. They control all the narratives. Just too much control, period.
Too much control in the SEC. I'm telling you, guys, this is not healthy for the game. This is not growing the game of college football. It's regionalizing the game of college football even more, and that's turning off other parts of the country. And I think ratings matter. I think the amount of people who care about the sport matters. I want to see this thing be successful. I don't necessarily want to see it come down to just being cared about right here in this vicinity of the Southeast.
Absolutely. The issue, though, is if you're going to put out there to bids, I mean, it's just going to be a dick measuring contest because ESPN's got the biggest dick in the room. So they'll be able to put the money up. And
yes and no, but the powers that be in college football can direct this thing. I don't see why they wouldn't do what the NFL does. Fox gets some games, NBC gets some games, CBS gets some games. Why can't you figure out a way to divvy it up? ESPN.
So what you're saying is do it like they do in the regular season. CBS gets the primetime SEC game and 3:30 slot and 8 o'clock slot for the bigger games. The ESPN has second choice of those games.
I think you can make a lot more money if you do that and you have each network chipping in a lot more because I think ESPN is convinced the powers that be that their way is the only way, and that's just not the case. I mean, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's not just the games that you have to look at. It's all the TV shows and stuff like that they get to put out, the rankings and releases and stuff. I mean, they're making money hand over fist with that.
Yep.
Jason, if you were to come up with an idea for how the expansion needs to look, I mean, would your idea be 8 or 12 teams or?
I would go with the 18 model. That would be my preference. The 5 conference champions getting in, and the 3 at-large bids. Maybe one group of 5 team. If you have one that's good enough that season, maybe it'd have to be ranked at a certain spot. But that would be my preference. 8 teams, 5 conference champions getting in.
I think you have to think about what Brad said about the sports just become so regionalized with the playoffs. I mean, is Washington the last team from the Pac-12 to make it in a few years ago?
I believe so. I don't think anybody's made it since then.
That was back in 2015, wasn't it?
No, it was 16. 16, yeah.
Yeah, it was 16 because Clemson was in the Fiesta Bowl against Ohio State and Washington played Alabama.
Yep.
So that's too long. I mean, that's too long for the West Coast to be left.
Yeah. We need. I mean, and the thing is, if you give more people an opportunity to watch it, recruits don't feel like they have to go to one place. What's hurting though is that this country in general is migrating to the Southeast. And so a lot of the really good football players are ending up in the Southeast. It's just easier and cheaper to live here and all that kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of issues going on.
Very true. Very true. Well, you know what? That wraps up today's show. Death Valley Daily, thank you so much for joining us. Brad, Jason, guys, thank you so much for being on. And let's do it again on Monday. How's that sound?
Sounds great to
like
me.
a plan.
All right,
Talk to y'all
guys.
then.
As always, be sure to listen to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll publish it later today. And also, you can be sure to check out the website, allclemson.com, for all your latest Clemson sports information. We have NFL previews coming out this week of Clemson players in the NFL. Playoff games are going to be big for this weekend. So just get out there and enjoy this weekend, guys.
Sounds good. Take care, everyone.